Good afternoon. Hope you all made it well and safely without many disruptions to this event here. My name is Rui Frazão. I'm a solutions architect leader working with the Vodafone team. And we're planning to have a session today. We're going to talk about Vodafone's journey, building a platform, Telco as a service. Unfortunately, there were a few challenges on getting some of the people here. So Ben Conley from Vodafone was not able to make it. However, we managed to record a video with him. And you're going to see a video where he's going to drive through the transformation and also introduce himself. We also had a bit of a challenge with our colleague from Accenture, Maynard.
Indeed, yeah. So Chris Meads, nice to meet everybody. I look after anything we do as Accenture for Vodafone Group in the UK. I've been very close to the Vodafone digital journey over the last 3 years, but I have to start with an apology whereby Maynard Williams was supposed to be here to present as our technical lead for Vodafone Digital, but unfortunately was struck down with COVID yesterday. So I'm a last-minute substitution, so apologies.
But it doesn't matter how many challenges are thrown at us, we always manage to find a way to move forward. So I hope that you enjoy this session. What we'll be covering is the journey that we've been going jointly at Accenture and ourselves with Vodafone for the last 5 years. It started in the UK, and Chris and I are going to talk about Vodafone's mission and what they achieved in the UK over the last 5 years. And then we'll break into Ben's video, where he's going to talk us through the changes upcoming and how they're bringing this project globally. And at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. So, Chris, back to you.
Thanks, Rui. So if we start with the mission statement here and what we're trying to achieve, it's to deliver customer value at sustainable speed with a world-class technology team. And if we start to break that down, if we look at customer value, what do we mean? Well, Vodafone traditionally, with its customers, everyone's very used to working with assisted channels. If you want to get something from Vodafone, you call them. And so the focus on value it's as much about moving away from the assisted channels, moving away from calling the call center as much as it is about a relentless focus on the customer. And so we're really focused on providing really great personalized experiences in digital so that you want to go to digital, you don't want to go to store, you don't want to call us. From a sustainable speed perspective, that's all about balancing that rate of change with stability and really working on driving down that time to market drastically. And then lastly, the world-class technology team. This is really the secret sauce for Vodafone. Vodafone are on a big journey to move away from this traditional telco to being a techco, to being engineering-led and start to drive everything through technology. And that starts with Vodafone Digital and everything we've been doing with AWS, with Accenture and Vodafone to move them to the next level. And all of that really comes down to the people. So if we look at that strategy and how it's starting to bear results, you can see the graph on the screen here. This is revenue by year. And so that strategy, that approach is really starting to drive significant results, significantly ahead of the UK market. Now, digital in Vodafone UK, it makes up almost half of all sales that they make. So it's 43%, up from 13% 4 years ago. Pretty significant step forward and a big move away from those assisted channels and significantly ahead of the competition in the UK market. Alongside that, we've driven up throughput by 250%. We're rated #1 for customer experience. I think the last couple of months we've won, 8 industry awards or so. And the culture is a very unique one. And I think that's the key to all of this and what we'll touch on a little bit later. But I'll hand off to Rui to start to talk about the technical architecture.
Thank you. Unsurprisingly, so this is 5 years back, Vodafone started their journey with the basics. Understanding how to use the cloud with virtual machines, so EC2 instances, and manage the services that they could run in the cloud. The focus was, on one side, to reduce the IT operational complexity, but also to start experimenting with some of the cloud services. And they started adding up to 50 cloud services that they started using and experimenting. On the second year, they started the journey to change their applications. Most of the applications they were running and developing, also in partnership with Accenture, were traditional monolithic applications. And once they got more comfortable with the cloud, year 2 was about breaking those applications and moving into microservices. So one of the key services that they started using was containers and ECS back then. Kubernetes was still not a trend in that time. But also they start exploring other managed services that enable them to break those applications and start managing them in a different way. So third year was about managing the complexity that was being built. So they started using more of the cloud services. For those of you that are familiar, you start breaking your applications into different VPCs. And one of the big steps there was how to handle the networking, how to connect to their on-premises systems, but also how to interconnect all of the various applications they were transforming in the cloud. And Transit Gateway is highlighted there, was one of the big step forwards. But they also start focusing on how to run and manage costs more efficiently. This was also a big year where they start looking into savings plans and looking at an architecture that enable them to leverage the cloud capabilities to reduce their operational cost. Year 4 was the year that they got more comfortable and started moving into more of the managed services. They started exploring things like Aurora database, so Aurora managed database. They started using some of the file transfer cloud native services. This is when they realized that there's an additional benefit on going cloud native for managed services. And also start looking into how to move away and start reducing their complexity, both in terms of on-prem services that we're running, but also in terms of the services they had moved, so the lift and shift to the cloud. Year 5 is where we are today. And now Vodafone is looking at event-driven architectures. One of the big steps through this journey has been breaking those monolithic applications into microservices. But managing large quantity of code is still very complex. And they also realize that the level of events that they operate, and Chris will talk a bit more about that soon, requires them a level of scalability and reduced interdependency between different applications. And this is where they're now moving to event-driven architectures. Also, they've been looking at standardizing now their services in the container space. So there's also an adoption of Kubernetes as Kubernetes started to become the trend across several industries, including Telco, and adopted EKS, and are also in the process of migrating some of their older workloads on ECS towards EKS. So it's interesting when you look back, and for those of you that that work with us and know how we look at a cloud journey, it's interesting to see, and looking back, that they actually went through that cloud journey. So first lift and shift, and then re-platform some of their components, and then looking at re-architecting, and now going to serverless technologies and event-driven architectures. Now, this is not just about the technology transformation. There's a huge focus on culture and people change. And I would hand it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand, and you're using that technology transformation to drive that big cultural shift. And I'll pull out kind of 4 key parts of that. So first of all, going from a small team that's 100% onshore to a global team of engineers, over 800 people across 5 or 6 different locations working in true distributed agile. Critically, none of those teams is solely Accenture or AWS. They're all joint teams, all focused around common OKRs and common outcomes. And it's a big shift and a big shift in a way of working. The next one was moving from that traditional waterfall approach to true safe as a proper value stream approach. So end-to-end deliveries, not owning different parts of the journey. End-to-end view with a real focus on value and value alignment over management overhead. Predictability over that rigid routine, and really starting to laser on value. And I think the best example of this was we had the Christmas party last week, a bit early, but fine. And I was chatting to a few of the team, and I was like, oh, where do you work? And, oh, Vodafone Digital. What do you do? What team are you? And he goes, oh, I sell handsets. Right? And he's a lead back-end engineer, and so he's like, oh, I sell handsets. And for me, that's the best summary of a cultural shift. You have engineers starting to be so value-focused that what they do is they sell handsets. right? That was a great reflection point for me. The third one, I'd say, is not being solely delivery focused. That shift to give engineers the time to innovate, the time to drive change. A great example of this is the optimization program. We're encouraging engineers to come up with ideas, really to drive much higher conversion within digital. Over the last, I think, 8 months, we've driven over 100 different A/B tests around that space, and as a result, this year we put 60,000 orders through digital that wouldn't have been there before. So a great example of giving that space, giving that time, and balancing it with core delivery. And then lastly, I think we say that from control to empowerment and psychological safety. Whoops. Sorry, guys. From control and empowerment to, so we give the teams the empowerment to decide how they want to go about things, not this rigid control. And then secondly, we spend a lot of time on psychological safety training, mental health, and really empowering the teams. And so what does this start to do? Well, it's all about business results, right? And if we look at our time to market, if we look at the number of releases we're doing, it's incredible. So 4 years ago, we did 21 releases a year. This year, we've done 2,300. Right? Significant. And if you look at that from a business lens, that's giving us a lot more differentiation when it comes to pricing, to be able to react to market demands, right? And the speed is, unreal and unmatched in the UK market. And so what does it mean in practice? So I'm sure a lot of you are telco experts, but the big thing for a telco is an iPhone launch, right? That's the thing, not Black Friday. iPhone launch is the big thing every year. So 4 or 5 years ago, what would that iPhone launch look like? There'd be 20 people working on it for 3 months, everyone panicking about stability, panicking about will the IT hold up, will we get it live on time? You can see the picture on the left there, pizzas in the office the night before the iPhone goes live. Right, it's a very, very different world to one today, right? So this isn't our offices during COVID. This is our offices during iPhone deployment. It's a completely different world. No one has to think about the IT. It just works. It just scales up. And therefore, Vodafone are focusing on the business side. What are other competitors doing? They can react quicker. They're live every time. They're always stable. And every year, the last couple of years, we've beat the competition when it comes to iPhone time. So it really brings to life that cultural change and the technology change that underpins that to give you that confidence. So that's the Vodafone UK digital story in a nutshell. So we're going to talk a bit about what's next and how we're going global, creating a global digital engineering organization and creating what we call TaaS, Telco as a Service. So we're going to hand over to Ben on video to talk us through it.
Thanks, Maynard. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Connolly, Head of Cloud Engineering here at Vodafone. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm really excited to talk about what's coming next and how we're going to build on all of those exciting capabilities and the journey that we've been through so far already. So Vodafone is a huge organization spread across Europe and Africa mainly, where we have markets working independently across each of their markets in their local context, solving challenges, really focused on their customers. Each team is building things independently. They're solving the same challenges over and over again. We're learning the same lessons. And really, so how do we connect and leverage that scale of a global organization to accelerate the outcomes for Vodafone, but also build on the capabilities using AWS and powered through a platform that we're calling TaaS, or Telco as a Service, to truly leverage that scale of the organization. So we're going to achieve that in 2 very simple ways. And these are really basic principles, but through this way of working, we really expect that we can achieve a really good balance of local autonomy, allowing teams to move at pace, solving their own problems and working with their local context and customers, but at the same time really connecting and using the power and leveraging the scale of such a global organization as ours. So the first of those principles is really simple. If you need something, check that it doesn't already exist before you build it. So we'll connect our teams, we'll ask around, we'll make sure that if we need something, we just don't build it if it already exists. If somebody else has already solved that problem and has a way to even get us started, then let's connect and let's reuse from each other in that way. And the second, and this is really important so that we don't slow each other down by centralizing and rationalizing too much. If you need something and it doesn't already exist, then fine, then build it. And build it for your context, for your customers, but let's build it also in a way where we can reuse it globally. Allow it to be used by other markets and others who haven't yet approached that challenge, and then we can really start to motor and accelerate. So 2 really simple guidelines there, but this is the way that we believe that we're going to leverage the scale of an organization, really harness the power of our platforms and partnerships, and truly achieve world-class results for Vodafone. So, like I said, we have over 30 cloud engineering teams already across Vodafone, and so we're really keen to harness that scale and really leverage that power. So the way we're doing that will be to create a framework, a strategy that will connect all of our teams. It won't be the usual approach of creating a 31st team and using this team to do it again, but then to replace all of the others. Instead, we're simply going to pivot all of our teams into one single direction. That is where TaaS and Telco as a service really comes in. This is our way where we can really learn from each other, build together, and consolidate all of our capabilities into one repo, but also into one catalog of components that's constantly evolving, constantly being contributed to, and constantly being reused across all markets. We had an amazing get-together, our first cloud summit in London recently, and together we identified over 150 capabilities across Vodafone today. Many duplications, many different interpretations of the same challenge, but huge opportunity really to connect and leverage that scale of the company. We actually think that we'll achieve about 80% reduction in duplication across Vodafone, and so really allowing each of those engineers to contribute in a way that nobody has done before, but really adding new value all the time to Vodafone. So you can see here that each market has its own capability, its own interpretation of how to host a microservice, how to expose APIs, which capabilities and tooling choices and preferences that it has to solve its problems. And that's really important in some ways, that they're able to solve those problems locally, with their local context, with their customers in mind. But there's also a huge opportunity for us to connect globally, still allowing that local autonomy, but at a global scale, and really allowing us to leverage the scale of such a large organization. You can see how we're going to move forward now. With this strategy, with TaaS at our heart, and with those principles in mind, we can begin to build a global catalog, a suite of capabilities that takes the best bits of all of those interpretations and connects them together, allowing all teams, all markets to continue contributing on a global scale, but still focused on their local challenges, their local contexts, and their customers that are at the heart of everything we do. With the suite, ever-growing suite of capabilities from AWS and our ways of connecting now globally, we have a truly awesome opportunity here to scale Vodafone, but also to accelerate those outcomes and to really drive the best experience possible for customers. This transformation has people at the heart, as well as all of the technology capabilities, the frameworks, the strategies that I've talked about. This is also a huge opportunity for us to connect teams globally with an exciting career, an ambitious career path ahead of them as well. Just like our technology capabilities that I've mentioned, teams of today are very much locally focused. They have a small cohort in each market, in each team, and don't feel as though they are really connected globally. With this strategy, with Telco as a service, we're now able to connect all engineers of a particular type into one community globally, providing them not just the opportunities to work on solutions that benefit hundreds of millions of customers, but also now connecting on a truly global career path that will fuel their own personal ambitions as well. We start by having connecting communities together. In fact, we did this a few weeks ago in London with our first cloud summit for Vodafone. We invited teams from all over the world, as well as central teams, to come together into one place and share their journey, their experiences, their challenges today. But also very specifically, we talked about the roadmaps that each of us are building towards. This allowed us to get together and look at how we can help each other, how we can accelerate particular parts of a roadmap by reusing from elsewhere, how we can connect teams together in order to leverage that scale and to accelerate markets by connecting globally as well. The next thing, as I said already, is to produce a global technical career path. We've previously had a very managerial focused career path, and not so much focusing on the engineering excellence and contribution that each of us have. This opportunity now is to truly do that on a global scale, bring in all teams together, and allowing engineers to focus on how they want to fuel their own careers, not just locally and not just within a constrained systems engineering team, but now on a global scale, and really truly being able to connect as one. The next, of course, is that we have to contribute and share in the same place. So we're producing source strategies that allow teams to connect and communicate, but also to share and collaborate on code, contributing constantly and also reusing as much as possible. And finally, the way we connect with our partners is changing for the better. Previously, many telcos will use suppliers and third parties as vendors, classically. We're now leveraging our relationships and our partners in a new way that connects and extends our own capacity. So we're truly on the same journey together, leveraging the experience of partners like AWS and Accenture, but to not just help us build and deliver for Vodafone, but also to build the culture and the team and the career paths that we are so desperate for. So where next? Imagine if our engineers had the opportunity to use capabilities, to use tools and platforms that really, truly power nations and impact millions of lives on a global scale. One of those opportunities in Vodafone, and really one of the biggest prizes, is a system called M-Pesa today. And this is a payment platform, a mobile payment platform, used in many countries in Africa today. In fact, in Kenya, it underpins almost half of their GDP. This is used for microtransactions like buying a coffee, it's used for money transfers, and really is pivotal and so important in the lives of millions of people across the world. Now, if we can harness the power and the capabilities and truly leverage the scale of our organization with an engaged team, with a great career path, and connected with partners and capabilities like those from AWS, we truly have an incredible opportunity to scale and to accelerate, but also transform Vodafone into the global technology business we know it can be. And so with all of that coming together, we have some truly amazing opportunities ahead of us. And so with that, I'll hand back to Maynard now to take any questions that you might have. I can't wait to see what we achieve on this journey together with AWS and Accenture. And I'm really excited to come back and tell you all how it's going.
You can see now why I had to introduce Maynard at the start of that video. So, I think the Vodafone UK story is incredible, and it's been a great journey. But hopefully you can tell from that how excited everyone is about the opportunity. The opportunity to reuse at scale globally across 12 different markets is significant. And just recently, earlier this year, as one example, we took the ECS and Lambda capabilities from Vodafone UK. They've been live in the UK for the last few years, and deployed them into Hungary, fully live, operational in 2 weeks. And that's the kind of benefits we're going to start to get and drive through this new TaaS strategy. So normally when we tell this story, there's kind of 3 themes that come through in terms of questions. So we thought we'd address those first, and then we'll open up. We've got plenty of time for questions from you guys. So Rui, do you want to talk first on how AWS and Accenture are helping with the cultural transformation?
Sure. One of the things that Vodafone wants to achieve is a transformation from what they say a telco company to a techo company. So focusing on technology and having the ability to build that technology on their platforms. And to achieve that, they are changing their teams and the skill sets and looking at developing their engineers to become more of software engineers and also hiring externally those software engineers. And they approached us both in terms of us helping them on that journey and validating what they're doing across the different countries. It's normal for my team of solutions architects to be engaged by the different teams and be questioned about how they can support some of the different projects they have. And one of the things that we realize ourselves is that they're trying to do things that other teams have been doing. And this is one of the elements that Ben alludes as a partnership, is instead of just keeping things flowing in each of the markets, they rely on us to identify those opportunities to leverage other developments that are done in other countries. So we're helping from that perspective, identifying duplication of activities that they could just leverage something that was used there, and relying on us how we can help them evolve those developments and make them more generic so that they can adopt across different countries. But they're also looking at learning from how the wider pan-Amazon knowledge on driving digital transformation and trying to understand how they can adopt some of those. It's not unusual that we have conversations where we bring some of our leaders from Amazon.com or other businesses where they explain how we went through that transformation ourselves, and for them to try to figure out how they could reuse that knowledge and apply to their teams. We're also have some sessions with them in terms of explaining how we drive a culture of innovation. Some of you might know about AWS or Amazon, how we drive innovation starting with the customer, so working backwards from the customer. And this is something that we do on a regular basis. Think about what's the big problem that a customer is trying to solve, and then work backwards and break down into small details. And this is one of the areas that we've been working with Vodafone and Vodafone teams, is for them to understand that. We even have a mechanism that we call press release and frequently asked questions as a starting point to figure out what the problem that we want to solve and what's going to be the outcome. And those are things that we're sharing. So we're helping them not just from a technology perspective, but also helping them in terms of what have we learned ourselves as a company and what have we adopted, what worked for us, and have an open conversation with them and see how they could adopt this in one way or the other. But I know that also from an Accenture perspective, they lean very much on your skills and your culture as a way for them to evolve, right?
Yeah, we could spend a good hour on culture, but I guess the three things I'd call out is, one, that one team culture I touched on earlier, and you heard Ben talk about not vendors, but partners. I think that word partners used quite a lot, probably in the wrong way. And so to say it is very easy, but to implement it and implement that culture right from the top all the way through the teams is pretty significant, and you can see how we've done that. I'd say the second one is, that's made a big difference, is embedding a culture of continuous innovation. Right, and really driving that culture from day one. So we take 20% of our team's time to drive continuous improvement, continuous innovation. That's had a significant impact. So within the first 18 months, we drove up throughput by 250% entirely from that initiative, and we created a brand around it. We publicized it. We got lots of stash around it. We called it hyperscaling, and that culture that we created, I think, is a big result of that. And then lastly, I'd say, just bringing data to the fore a bit more, putting it in the hands of the teams and hands of the engineers, letting them see what that product that they're building is looking like in production. How's it performing? Getting them to care about the product and the end customer output, and really driving a load of data. Next one, Rui, how are the AWS training initiatives helping Vodafone upskill their teams and their engineers? Yeah, so one of, I think, the most important things in this transformation is making sure that people have the right skills. Many people have different notion of what the cloud is and what can be done with the cloud. We've started doing several initiatives with Vodafone. So something that we do on a regular basis with various teams is what we call immersion days. And this is a hands-on session, can be a day or a day and a half, for specific topics. Can be generically let's say the foundational topics or services of the cloud, but it can also be cloud economics, or can be even more deep in terms of how you drive containers or other types of architectures. And we started doing those sessions, and a few years ago we realized that there was a handful of people coming to those sessions, and they didn't really understand the cloud. There was a lot of different concerns, and then through those sessions and the fact that they're hands-on, and some of the people more technical or less technical, when they figured out that they could deploy a virtual machine within minutes and not having to wait many months for the virtual machine to be available, this was really mind-blowing for them. As things evolve, what they understand is that the cloud allows for an environment for experimentation. And this has been one of the ways we've been working with Vodafone, is making them understand and give them the skills and knowledge that there's experimentation possible, and not be afraid of trying new things and see how things can evolve. Immersion days that we used to run with a handful of Vodafone attendees recently, and we're doing across different markets, we're running sessions with more than 200 people from Vodafone. So really, they start to embrace the fact that training and getting these type of skills is important for them. Now, those activities have been primarily focused with the technology teams. And recently, we've worked with Vodafone on building what we call a cloud guild. So setting up career paths and development paths for different types of people in the organization. And this is not just looking at the technical people, but also looking at management, looking at finance, looking at other parts of the organization, so that they also start understanding what the cloud is, but also that they have a learning path that aligns with their career evolution.
So this is something that we've been working with them for the last year or so, has been launched internally across their training platform globally and available for all of the different markets. It's really focusing on giving them those tools, those learning tools, so that they can gain the cloud skills. There's a number of other initiatives that also start to come up as they gain more skills. We've been running a few hackathons. There's actually one ongoing currently in South Africa with Vodacom, part of the Vodafone group, where they're looking at bringing then the people into developing creative solutions that they want to leverage and potentially productize in the future. So it has been a journey. It's a journey about upskilling, about providing understanding, about aligning training paths with career paths, and helping them really go through that transformation.
Very good.
Thank you. I would take that question and ask you, because you've been on site working with that, and what do you think in this journey are the technologies that we brought to Vodafone that has been more useful for TaaS?
Yeah, so I'll keep it brief. I think there's three key parts. So first off, containers. I talked about that example earlier, moving them off-prem. We talked about it with Vodafone Hungary and the benefit that brings of that reuse from the UK. The second one with the microservices architecture that Rui touched on earlier. I think really here, the opportunity to drive significant reuse at scale globally is huge. Really starting to break that customer journey down into different components and start to treat those components as products. And that's really what's starting to drive this scaled reuse we're starting to see emerge now. And then finally, the last 12 months, we've been working on much more these event-driven architectures. So for example, breaking up these very traditionally monolithic areas of code that we see in a telco digital capability, like the checkout or basket areas, and starting to use much more of these event-driven architectures to change that, using Event Bridge, using step functions, et cetera. And we're starting to see huge benefit from that, getting much more hands-on code this year, giving us much more opportunity to spin out more release trains and ultimately drive more business value.
Thank you very much for joining us, and Chris also for stepping in, and Ben for being able to make the video. I'm sure that we'll have other opportunities to come back here and explain how the journey continues.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.